Welcome to my final presentation. My name is Miles Hart, and the project that I decided to work on for my final in the predictive modeling class was predicting hypertension in patients given some of their health history. Hypertension is most notably high blood pressure. It's just hypertension is the scientific name for it. And it hits pretty close to home to me because last week I was actually diagnosed with it. So this study actually had some personal prevalence to me, and gave me some ideas of what I could do to maybe even lessen my case of it. So to begin, hypertension is actually shown to affect 70% of Americans, and only about a quarter of them will actually get their blood pressure under control after being diagnosed with hypertension. Hypertension can be really dangerous because it affects, not only the heart but the brain, the kidneys, and the blood vessels throughout the body. If you don't take care of your high blood pressure, it really increases the risk for heart attacks, strokes, and heart failure in the future. And not only does it have physical effects, but there are some socioeconomic effects that do um, occur when high blood pressure happens because you lose productivity within your business. Your employees don't get checks if they're not working, and then the cost of healthcare also has to be put into perspective when talking about the socioeconomic burden of hypertension. So it's really important that we try to um, limit the amount of hypertension going on in society because there are these effects, and people that can get past their hypertension will have a greater quality of life. So in order to try to find cases of hypertension quicker, we're going to try to create a model. And the roadmap for this model, as you can see here, first step is going to be gather data on patients that are willing to participate, create a model to try to find and identify patients that may be at a higher risk for hypertension than others. Once we identify those patients, we want to intervene in their situation early to try to lessen the harmful impacts of hypertension. And then we want to see them accept treatment and live healthier. So the data for our model, we can go over this really quick. That's just a quick dictionary for the model. I will go through these. The age, of course, is going to be the age of the patient in years. The smoking status is going to be a 0 for no, a 1 for yes, so that's whether or not somebody smokes. Cigarettes per day if they do smoke. Blood pressure medicines if they're already on blood pressure medicine. The diabetes variable is going to show whether they are diabetic or not a diabetic. Total cholesterol is their cholesterol number. Systolic blood pressure is going to be sys-BP. Diastolic blood pressure is going to be dia-BP. The body mass index of the patient is going to be under the BMI variable. The heart rate variable is just the heart rate. The glucose level is just that, the glucose. And then the risk status for hypertension is going to be a 0 for no and a 1 for yes. And that's ultimately what we're going to be trying to find in this model is this patient at risk for hypertension? So the importance of the variables, we'll go through all these. If you're a male or female, males tend to be at a higher risk for hypertension than women. Age is often a deciding factor in hypertension. As you get older, your arteries begin to harden, and it's just a natural thing that higher blood pressure develops as you age. Smokers often have a higher percentage of hypertension in their population because the effects of nicotine and tobacco on the arteries and the blood vessels and things like that. Nicotine, of course, narrows the blood vessels, and that makes your blood and your heart work harder to pump. So if you're already on blood pressure medicine, um, and then your blood pressure goes higher, that would indicate that you are at higher risk for hypertension. So if you're already on blood pressure medicine, it's a pretty good indicator of how you're managing, or what your future prospects are like, given a few of the other variables. Diabetes. Diabetics are at a higher risk of developing high blood pressure because of the damage it does to blood vessels, and that makes it harder for blood to flow, as we know, when the blood vessels have damage. Cholesterol levels are a pretty big factor in hypertension, because the higher your cholesterol is, the higher your risk is for clogged blood vessels and things of that nature. Hardened blood vessels, like we talked about with diabetes, it's harder, in smoking, it's harder to pump blood through hardened blood vessels. So cholesterol levels is going to be a pretty big player here, I feel like, in our model. Body mass index. Body mass index tells a person or a patient how their body, it indicates how obese they are, basically. So the lower the number, the better. The higher the number, the worse off you are by BMI. As you all know, the obese demographic tends to have more cardiovascular issues than people who are smaller. Although it's not always the case, that is definitely a trend. Your heart rate. If you have a higher heart rate, your heart is obviously working harder to pump the blood, which could be an indicator of high blood pressure throughout. Glucose level could identify somebody who could be at risk for heart disease or hypertension because of the nature of diabetes that we talked about earlier. So they might have high glucose levels, but may not necessarily be a diabetic yet. So really, with that indicator, you could kind of show that they were diabetic, or on the road to diabetes. And then if their glucose is high, it may give a indication that high blood pressure could be occurring for this patient. So to start the model, we decided to run our data through the program RapidMiner's feature auto model, which it basically puts the data through about 10 different modeling types, and it spits back out what the most effective model is in various ways. So when we put our data in there, as you can see, it'll run it through a naive Bayes model, a generalized linear model, logistic regression, fast large margin model, deep learning, decision tree, random forest, gradient boosted trees, and a support vector machine model. So for all of us for us to do that, would take a lot of time, but run it through auto model definitely shaves the time off of it, and it shows, it gives them all a rock chart, which shows kind of the efficiency of the model, and then it shows how quickly it was able to create the model using those. So what we're looking for is something that's fast and efficient and scores pretty high. So as you look through this data here, it's harder to see on this one because of the size of the figure, but our model for the logistic regression is going to be pretty close to that curve there. And what you really want to see is an L-shaped curve on the rock model, and that just indicates how efficient it is per the population. And we're looking pretty good there. So the decision tree is a nice model there. You can see here that its accuracy is fairly high, and then it didn't take much time to create the model. So in my eyes, the logistic regression was a great choice to begin our model. So that's where we're going to go. So in creating our model, I wanted to get a little bit more in depth with it than what auto model does. What I did initially was make a matrix that shows the correlation between the the variable risk and the rest of the variables we have, because risk is going to be our target variable, and then the rest of these variables are going to be our predictor variables. So when I did the correlation matrix on our variables, the systolic blood pressure and the diastolic blood pressure and risk were a little bit a little bit more highly correlated than the other variables, but not at a measure that would really skew the model. At least so I thought. So my initial run of the model, I did leave the systolic blood pressure and the diastolic blood pressure out, and we'll see what we got when we did that. So the figure is a little blurry, but the accuracy of the model without those two variables, 68.09, and you can see it struggled to predict the true patients at risk for hypertension. So at that number, 68.09, our model is really not that great, and we do need to do some tweaking to make it better. And that's what we show here, that we do feel like we can make the model better and help patients into the future making some tweaks. So when we tweak it, we did add the systolic blood pressure and the diastolic blood pressure. Our model was a lot more accurate. Overall, our accuracy went up to 87.11%, which is pretty high. That's almost 9 out of 10 patients we can identify, their risks. And then our true class was way higher, 74.7%. So almost 3/4 of patients we can identify, a potential true hypertension case with the variables that we had there. As you can see there, without the blood pressure level variables, we were at 49, so barely half, or just a little under half, really. So obviously, adding the variables was the right move. Our model is much more successful this way, and we're going to go forward with this model. So when we talk about putting this model in action, we will have to get patients to be on board with giving up their data, and they have to realize that into the future, especially with advancements in AI and things like that, data-driven medicine will be a large thing. So we're getting just proactive here. We're trying to be ahead of the curve and make a model that will help predict possible troubles for our patients, and have early intervention. We do want our patients to survive and thrive into the future, but we can try to make these models and give them the advice all they want, but really the ball is in their court, and the decision's up to them to live healthier lives and take our advice to be in better health, really. So hopefully we have opened your eyes to modeling and its potential. I think this model will be great to try to help some patients and see where we go in the future. And thank you for your time and listening, and I appreciate your attention. Thank you.